Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Beyond Influence. I am Kwame. I am here with my co-host, Scott, and we are joined by one of the, largest, I could say up-and-coming internet sensations, but in all honesty, he's already at the top and still somehow growing. Very excited to have this conversation today. Welcome to Beyond Influence, Nick Kosir.
I'm so excited to be here, guys. Scott, Kwame, it is an honor. Kwame, this is the first time that I've seen you not in the middle of Times Square with 1,000 people around us. So it's nice to get some one-on-one time with you.
All right, isn't it? It's funny. So, I'll tell the world about how Nick and I met. I was walking down in Times Square with one of my coworkers, one of our employees, actually, Chantal, and I see Nick at the corner of my eye, and I'm like, I process for a second. I'm like, there's no way. I know who that is. I know who that is. And so I'm like, Chantal, do you know who that is? Do you know who that is? So I walk over and I'm like, yo, hey man, I'm a big fan. And one of the coolest things about being someone who has a platform and seeing someone who has a platform is when y'all both link like that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I know you too. Yeah. Uh-huh. And that had to be one of the coolest moments, man. I loved meeting you, and I'm glad to actually get some more FaceTime with you today, Nick.
Yeah, same. No, I had that whole process went through my mind, and yeah, I could see like the exact moment when the gleam in our eyes met. We're like, oh, whoa, because dude, my wife and I watched, every millisecond of your season of Love is Blind. Kwame and Chelsea were huge fans. We're big fans of you both in our household. And
oh, that's awesome.
I just, that's the beauty of New York. You're wearing the hat. Yeah. It's like you just never know who you're going to run into at any moment. And I'm glad that day, in that moment, it was you, because we're here now doing this, and I'm so excited. So thank you so much for having me.
For sure.
It's funny, we were all out there that week, and we were actually recording an in-person pod with another guest that day. And then Kwame and I meet up, and he's like, dude, you'll never guess who I met. It's the Dancing Weatherman. Yes. And I was like, oh, I've seen all of his. I was like, I feel like if you're anything like me, you find something and you're like, okay, now I need to see the next 100 posts. Yeah. And you just go deep. There was definitely multiple times I went deep, and it's funny, Kwame and I were talking, like your ability to collab and jump on trends. We'll dive into it, but it's amazing to see all the different, it's like a rolling index of TikTok trends, in your feed. And I just look at the collab list and I'm like discovering new people. I think it's the magic of TikTok and Instagram. It's just this fun collabs, not taking yourself too seriously. And I guess we can take it all the way back. And, you've been in the game for a while now. Did you ever think any of this was going to come? Take us back to the beginning and what inspired this whole journey?
Well, I've got a weird little journey, because I'm a little bit older, or I don't like to say old. I like to say I'm from a certain vintage. Now that makes it sound less abrasive for me, I guess. But I started in TV all the way back in 2005. So it's been 20 years, and I've had little brushes with local celebrity, if you want to call that, in each of the little cities that I've worked in. But the first time that I went viral actually happened before the word viral, I think, even existed, when I was known as the rapping weatherman at my first real TV job. I worked for a morning show, and I used to get on the air and I'd rap the weather forecast. And back then I'd put those on YouTube, and that took off. And so for a little window of time there, that was kind of my identity. That was my moniker. And everything has a shelf life, so that kind of ran its course. And then, so that was between the years of 2008 to maybe 2012. So then you cut to 2018, and I've jumped a few cities doing the news and weather, and I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and our bosses sit us down and they say, hey, we need you to post more fun lifestyle type stuff on social. And we go, cool, that sounds awesome. And they were like, yeah, you got to do it 12 times a day though. And we were like, no, what? That's a lot. So eventually we kind of leaned into it, and that's how this whole thing got going. So I wish I could tell you that this was all part of my master plan. It's not. I will say this though. I was very intentional, and I've always kind of been very intentional about using the internet and social media as a tool, as kind of a megaphone, almost like a resume. And so while I don't want to sit here and be the guy that says, yeah, I saw all this coming, I've always been intentional about leveraging the internet and social media to my benefit. And so I guess I don't know if I could tell you in all honesty that I could see this coming, but I hoped that it would come. And I am still humbled and honored and grateful every day that I'm where I'm at today.
That is dope, man. And you know what? Honestly, we all are as well. I think when you look at people who have a presence on the internet, I think sometimes personalities vary across. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know people who are very cheery, very kind, very humble on the internet, yet very different in person. And I think when you meet people who are genuine all the way through, it definitely feels different, man. And so if I was to say, I think you might not have expected it, but you deserve it. That's definitely the quote that I would put in this situation. So you're an awesome dude, man. Very happy for you, and obviously all your success. Now you're living in New York, the Big Apple, and I have the hat on for a reason.
Yes.
Yeah. So I got this hat when my wife and I climbed the Edge. Have you ever heard of that building? I'm sure you have.
Dude, I'm looking at it right now. I almost did that, but legal got involved. Fox Legal.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm excited to hear about it later. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, it's definitely a crazy experience. And when we got up, we got to have a little souvenir on the way down. And so the person who kind of invited us to do this whole Netflix social shoot got me this really dope Yankees hat, has the little Hudson Yards on the side. So a little memento for that moment, for that day. And I think like we honestly might have met not too long before or after that. And so this is all kind of in that same space, but you're a New Yorker now. You think about your journey here. How has this part of your journey really accelerated your growth? Because now you're just like, you're in Times Square, you're meeting these people, you're collaborating all the time. How has it felt to really transition to New York?
Well, New York is unlike any city in the world. I mean, we all know that for many reasons: food, cultural, history. I mean, it's all here. It all kind of started here. In terms of social media, it's cool. Just kind of the way that I met you in Times Square, there are always so many people coming and going. So on any given Monday or Tuesday after the weekend, when I open up my Instagram DMs, I mean, I can't tell. Just yesterday, I had not one but two K-pop groups, big ones, DM me, and they said, "Hey, we're going to be in New York in April and May. Are you around?" And I'm like, "Yeah," And New York is just not just the center of America or the world; it's the center of the universe, especially Times Square. And so, just being in a city where it's a destination and big names and big talented people are always coming and going. It's opened up a lot because I don't have to travel to them every time anymore. A lot of times they'll be here, and it's very comfortable for us both to collab because they're around. I live here, and there's some synergy in that way. Whereas when I lived in Charlotte, every once in a while somebody would come through, but more often than not, I'd have to fly to LA or I'd have to fly to Miami. And so I would definitely say that has been the biggest thing that's helped me improve my imprint on social, is just the proximity of all of the very talented people that come to this city. And obviously feeding off the energy is pretty easy to do here as well, especially in Times Square, especially when I dance with some of the guys that I meet up with all the time. I mean, within seconds, they're so good and they're so dynamic, and they do the break dancing and they can bounce on their hands in a handstand. People will circle up immediately. There's tourists taking pictures. And so combination of just the amount of talent in this city that come here on vacation and just the natural baked in energy that New York brings, those two things have really helped out a lot. Yeah.
It's funny. We talk about people like you who are, genuine, kind of person. It's funny. I remember having conversations, and you're a big fan of hip hop. And it was funny because I remember being in middle school, high school, and it was like, what are we going to be like? All these like hip hop fans, R&B fans as like 40, 50-year-olds. Cause like, it's so weird to think about a world where like the older generation is like hip hop fans. Cause at the time we're like, oh, we're the cool, edgy guys. And it's funny because I think about another creator, Harry Mack, and I don't know if you've done anything with him but he has a very similar story. He started doing like freestyle rapping and then just pursued the passion and the love, engaged with social media, all about the audience, having fun, like genuinely good human being. That is the collab I think the world needs. It's like you and Harry Mack doing some freestyle. But yeah,
I'm looking him up right now. I know who you're talking about. That's a good call. That's a good.
Yeah. Like,
oh, I didn't come up with that myself.
Yeah. But it's like, he has such a deep love and respect of hip hop. He's a student in the game, been doing it 20 years. Like a lot of the same parallels of just, didn't go in it for the money and the fame, just pure love. And then like wanting to build community, wanting to get out there, not necessarily anticipating it was going to be all that it is. But no, I love that. And I think so much of social media today has this vibe of like, oh, you're just in it for the fame. And I think people who start a little bit earlier, there wasn't necessarily that fame to be had. And it was just like, let me put stuff out and see if people like it and start engaging.
Yeah, I will say that my come up, a lot of people, when I see them on the street, they say, hey, you're that guy from TikTok. And I say, yeah, nice to meet you. And it's great. But to be honest with you, my big come up was on Instagram before I even knew about TikTok. This was back in the video that really hit for me. It was the Slide Like This challenge, and I posted it. I'll never forget the date. It was April 3rd, 2019. And I posted it at a time when Instagram Reels wasn't a thing, and the world really didn't know what TikTok was at the time. I think at that point, teenagers knew what TikTok was, and that was it. And I think that's why Old Town Road by Lil Nas X had blown up, because I think it started in TikTok. We just all didn't realize it. And yeah, I was putting stuff out there just for the heck of it. And I was dancing before I knew that dancing online was a thing or would become a thing on TikTok. I truly, like you said, and I'm glad that you picked up on it. I'm not clout chasing or using another culture for my own personal gain. I'm a dude. I'm now a middle-aged dude, white dude, works in corporate America from the suburbs that just loves hip hop, man. It's just in there. It's in my DNA. I've never not been in love with it. I started out listening to Biggie and Tupac and all of them, and I've tried to keep up with it throughout the years. I'm not as well versed anymore as I used to be. But when I hear something good, I try to enjoy it and appreciate it. And yeah, I've always just kind of, like I said, have really loved. I'm a creator at heart, So had this internet been around 20 years right after I graduated college, boom, I would have been a creator right out of the gate. But I took a little detour, 15, 20-year detour. Had a career out of it. Now I'm doing both. So I guess it's the best of both worlds.
That's awesome, man. You love it when it all works out. And like you said, you've gotten a plethora of messages and opportunities to connect with and collab with some really big names due to where you are. I just saw Johnny Two Phones.
Yeah.
Yeah. You are a staple of New York now. And so much so that K-pop groups are hitting you up, which, by the way, K-pop groups hearing that is actually mad. It's wild because K-pop groups are not like bands. Like in Korea, they are like gods and goddesses, they have like 300 million followers type stuff,
Yeah.
It's next level. So when you think about all of that, having that exposure to people like this, where do you think, or who do you think has been one person that you've just seen a message from or gotten to meet or connected with that was like, whoa, this is huge for me?
That's a good question. When I was first coming up in that time period that I mentioned in 2019, LeBron and D Wade liked one of my posts, and that blew me away because I was born in Cleveland, and so LeBron is my guy. But I think the thing that blew me away the most in person was, and I'm gonna 100% date myself here, but I am 41, and my senior year of high school was the year that Nelly's Country Grammar album came out. And listen, I didn't play anything but that album for an entire 12 months straight. I mean, that was the soundtrack to the senior year of my the senior year of my high school career. And I think like everybody's senior year is always kind of magical, or at least memorable, for better or for worse. And so I was able to meet Nelly backstage at a concert when he came to Charlotte, where I lived at the time. And not only was he cool to me, he recognized me. Like, I see Nelly over there and I go, oh my God. And in my mind, I'm like, how do I got to go over there and meet him? How can I do this and be smooth about it? But he came up to me and he's like, hey, you're that guy that's killing it, blah, blah, blah. And I was just stunned. And for me, that was the moment where the internet and social media became tangible. It all kind of seemed like fairy dust. I saw the numbers, but they didn't really mesh up until that point. And then I go, wow, the power of the internet and social media is real, and it is here to stay. And that really, it was an awesome moment, but it also was a huge like paradigm shift, perception change for me going forward. And yeah, man, I'll never forget that moment. I'm sure he's forgotten about me since then, but at least in that moment, he knew who I was. So I'm going to take that one to the grave.
That's awesome.
It's so funny on the nostalgia and like that whole era. Cause I remember like our 8th grade, the last day of school, we all thought we were so tough. We're like cleaning out our lockers, throwing papers on the floor, singing like DMX, Stop, Drop, like banging lockers, rolling through the school. And I was like, in hindsight, we're just like a bunch of random suburban, like 13-year-old kids shouting DMX. But yeah, it is funny. Like I do think that is one cool thing about social media, about music. It kind of transcends cultures. It brings folks together, exposes them. It's funny. Like there was this song, Big Dogs or whatever, that came out recently, and it's Hanuman Kind, and he's like out of India, but like grew up in Houston, and it was put out by Def Jam India, and then it's got crazy radio play in the US, and then he's like, the whole video is filmed in India. And I was like, it's so cool that this kid from India lives in the US, gets impacted by like, these Houston rap scene, and then launches his whole career, brings hip hop to India and then back to the States, and just it's definitely global. And has a huge impact. It's funny. So I was gonna comment on one of your posts because Kwame and I were talking about it, and I do want to, like, we try to help creators and educate a bit. One thing I think you do really, really well is jump on top of trends and kind of always keep yourself in the mix of things. I just have to say, going back through the feed and your post right after the Super Bowl coming out in the Kendrick Lamar flares, I was like, that is the fun. And you were on it, like the moment that happened. But yeah, how do you, what inspires those kind of moments, or like, how are you picking up on all these trends other than just, the scroll?
It's funny. I don't know if you guys know who Jordan the Stallion is.
Oh yeah.
Huge. Not to name drop. I swear, I don't mean to name drop, but I just was talking to him at a conference in Pittsburgh, and he said the same thing. And that was the first time that I had heard that. Now you're bringing it up to me right here. And it's interesting because for me, I don't know. I mean, I guess when you immerse yourself in it, it's easy to see. Or maybe I just have an eye for it. I don't know. It's funny to hear you guys now say this for the second time in a week. I've heard it. But I guess I've always kind of had a good eye for what is popular, what could become mainstream, what is mainstream. And in this day and age, it's hard. We're all kind of living a fractured reality because we're not all seeing the same stuff. We used to all consume entertainment and culture through kind of one medium, and that was TV. Well, now it's so fractured. You follow who you like, you see what you like. The algorithm only shows you more of what you like. And so it is difficult to kind of sift through everything, but I certainly, I guess, have an eye for at least what is cool, probably more so within like music and probably urban and pop music. So I don't know. It's weird. Maybe it's a talent of mine. I'm humbled to hear you say that, though. It's kind of cool, and I'm a little bit kind of speechless because I don't know what to say. Other than probably the real answer is I spend too much time on TikTok. There you go. That's probably why I can pick up on the trend. So we'll just go with that.
It's funny. It reminds me of this Rick Rubin quote where he's like, "I can't play an instrument, but what I bring is taste." And it's like the funniest thing, but it is true. There are certain people who just. I was watching all this content too was it Benny Blanco? He's like the producer behind Maroon 5 and all these guys, and his just ability to determine what people will love and what people will be entertained by. It's a gift, and it's like. There is an aspect, like some people are academic about it and some people it's just, I can tell you what people are going to like. And it's funny you mentioned Jordan. We were at a round table and got to connect with him and hear his perspective. And I was commenting to someone the other day, the depth that guy thinks about his content.
Yeah.
And he's like, I won't take a brand deal unless I meet with him in person and get to know what they're trying to accomplish, go through like a whole story arc. And you just think this guy's in his bathroom making funny videos, but the depth to which he's like, really thinking about what his audience wants to hear and what would work and how he can showcase a piece of content. Yeah. It's so much more than just this kind of internet phenom thing.
And I think that's very important to put out there because it is so easy. I mean, you guys know this better than anybody, but it's so easy to look at a creator or a feed and think, man, it must be, I hear this a lot. Man, it must be nice to post and make X amount of dollars just for one post. And it's like, well, a lot goes into that one post and the 20 or 30 that came before it. And yeah, Jordan is you can just tell, like you can just see the wheels spinning when you talk to him. He seems like a very deep thinker, and yeah, he's that's his talent. That's his gift. And I'm glad that he's able to share it with the world and we're able to see it.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things that come to mind within that entire dialogue. The first thing is the trend aspect of it and being able to focus, being able to see what's going to happen next, intuitively, and being able to connect to it, right? There's also the aspect of like how much you're making per post or what your following looks like. When people say, look at you and they say, oh, you have X amount of followers. I mean, fortunately for me, I was given a lot of followers and I'm very blessed with that. But Scott and I talked about this yesterday. I looked at my follower metrics the other day, right? And I gained over the last month, I gained about 5,000 followers, but I also lost it was like 2,000 followers, right? And so every month, what people don't realize is like every day you're losing there's a cycle. Right. In order to make sure you are retaining, because you see followers who gain a large following, and then you see that number slowly dwindle. Yeah. And you see their engagement slowly dwindle. Yeah. And that's because they essentially they detach from it or they walk away from it or they don't put in enough energy to sustain it. Yeah. But it is really, really difficult to sustain on social media because it used to be that if you posted one thing a week, you're fine. Engagement's okay. Nowadays, if you don't post every other day, at least most people are posting every day. Yeah, you're going to start losing engagement. And so that's a big component of it. I think there's a lot that goes into sustaining a social media a personality, an account and following. And so I do think that there's more respect that has to go into it. Now, when it comes to that same vein, but kind of spinning in a different direction, right? Maintaining your following, making sure that you are keeping them engaged, you always being able to connect to trends. You're someone who's always wired and always on. And I think that at times can be difficult for a lot of creators, right? Because sometimes most times you see that creation or content creation as your job. Yeah. And so it's like, am I ever able to detach from it? Yeah. Or am I always focused on it? And for you, being someone who's always able to immediately see that trend and hop on it and be able to create, it seems like you're kind of always on.
Yeah.
Right. How do you balance out the mental space between? Yeah.
It's crazy that you're asking me this, because recently I mentioned that my video popped on Instagram in April of 2019. We're coming up on that date. It's March 27th as we record this, 2025. So coming up on about 5 years of doing this. And I don't necessarily know that I have a good answer for you, because burnout is real. I am one of those guys. I'm from the Midwest, where you've got this mentality where you work and that's that. And I'm trying to get better at disconnecting and finding a little more balance. I will say this. You mentioned that sometimes accounts go like this and then they'll go like that. And sometimes they'll go like that for lack of content or not evolving, or 100 different things can happen. But sometimes people just get tired, and I now understand why. I got a little glimpse of what it's like to be a big famous Hollywood actor that is in every movie every summer for 5-10 years, and then you never see him again. and it's because they did it, and now they can sit back and be proud of what they did and maybe go on in a different direction and evolve. And so, yeah, I'm a little bit figuring out my next move. Like I said, I was the rapping weatherman. Now I did the dancing thing. Everything. I also mentioned everybody's got a shelf life. So, I think it's very important to always evolve too. And before I did the dancing stuff, I had done a bunch of other series. But you're right, Kwame. I mean, yes, in order to stay relevant, man, you have to hop on that hamster wheel. And that's why short form, this is some advice that I would give to creators watching. Short form is tough. I mean, it's great. You can hop on trends, you get numbers and gratifications pretty quickly. Brand deals come that way. But Kwame and Scott here kind of have it figured out, where podcasting, long form content, the creator monetization funds, those are the types, long form YouTube videos, those are the types of thing where you get a big ROI on your time and energy. So, you'll put this out. You guys will probably do a few clips of this, clip this over to short form, and hopefully this podcast will make you money for years to come and sustain you in that way. So you're not always having to put out stuff for the next brand deal or this or that. And I think that's a major key, because I think a lot of people think once you become viral, you're rich and you're set and you're good. And that's not necessarily the case. That's kind of when the work starts. And so, burnout is real, and it's certainly something that you have to watch out for, and being smart and intentional about your time and energy is very important.
It's interesting talking about kind of the half-life of content and kind of like, if you think about it in investment terms, it's funny because when Kwame and I started the podcast, we're like, hey, we gotta just go put out like the first 50 episodes, and you're going to figure out your voice and your audience, and you're going to get the right guests on, and moments are going to happen that are great and inspiring, and moments are going to happen. You're like, what are we doing here? And, it's interesting because in the same way that TikTok can be like, whatever, like the Bitcoin, and, podcasting is like a T-bond, or I don't know what the right investment thing is. It's like, government treasury bond. And it's just like, the more you put in, it's this compounding interest over time kind of scenario. And I think being able to balance, and I really like the way that Gary Vee approaches content. He's like, I create this long form, I chop it up, I create these short moments. I have some intentional short form content, but it's, this concept of just being able to have longer duration assets and then these like shorter hits and more punchy content to get people hooked into your world. And I will say, like, the longer form stuff, I am the most deeply invested, I think, in long form. And I establish the deepest relationships because spending an hour with someone is a long time. And I think about some of the creators on YouTube. I will watch Entire MKBHD videos. I watched so much Casey Neistat in the early days. I felt like I knew the dude, and I will spend hours with these individuals, their personality, their family, what they're interested in. And it's interesting you talk about that. I'll be curious to see where you talk about. Speaking of networks.
Yeah.
There's a big looming topic coming up, and it's eerily close to your anniversary of exploding as a content creator. But April 5th is kind of this TikTok. We noticed you made a post. It was like the guy slipping on ice, and you were cueing everyone, hey, hop over to my Instagram. You also have a dynamic in your following where you have a very, very large following on TikTok and a little bit less on Instagram. I'm curious, was that an intentional response to like, hey, I'm going to diversify myself? Or is it just me reading into kind of the random post?
No, that's actually part of a brand deal I have with Meta.
Oh, this is the tea I'm looking for. Okay.
But it's related because Meta hit me up about doing this brand deal, or deal, I guess, right around the time when we thought when TikTok was banned for all of 37 seconds. So
that was a very long 37 seconds for a guy who lives at social media company.
Well, I will say this. All social media platforms and all social media, the amount of followers that you have aren't created equal, right? So it's a little bit easier to blow up on TikTok than it is on Instagram. So I say this humbly, but I was actually hoping and maybe expecting, if TikTok were to get banned for good, to have a little bit of a boom in maybe brand deal opportunities over on Instagram, because if TikTok's gone, that dilutes out a whole lot of influencers. And I still have a decent, I've got 2.5 million over on Instagram. That's pretty good. I mean, I've got 9 on TikTok, but like I said, a lot of the movers and shakers and a lot of the money makers are investing on Instagram way more than TikTok. So we'll see what happens. I mean, we'll see what happens. But yeah, overall, I encourage everybody to post across all platforms. And in this day and age, they're all kind of homogenized. They're all the same, right? They're all just trying to be TikTok, so Reels, Shorts. By the way, you can make a lot of money on Facebook Reels these days, which I think a lot of people have written off. But hey, that Meta money is good. That Zuckerberg has got some deep pockets over there, and they've been around for a while, so they know what they're doing. But yeah, I wasn't too worried. I was a little bit more optimistic than pessimistic. And I will say, though, if TikTok goes away, man, I will miss it. Or if it changes more or even more, I will miss it, because there's just something about that pandemic TikTok that I think we all just love and still kind of yearn for. That 2020, 2021 TikTok just hit different, man.
Yeah, you've got a wealth of knowledge about these things. I think it's really funny when you look at people who are successful on social media. Sometimes it just seems like they're people who create content, but there's a whole different level of it. In order to really succeed, there are levels that you have to understand. You have to understand who your audience is, how you interact with them, how to really get the most out of it. You have to understand repurposing your content, what levels or what types of that content are really going to pop on which network. So you've got a good understanding of this stuff. And it makes sense that you would, start relaying that content or some of that information, maybe in a college course, right?
That's smooth.
Yeah, trying to slowly segue my way there. So the Kosir code, you came up with this really, really kind of like awesome summation of what social media strategy is for you. I'd love for you to just kind of break that down for us, what the Kosir code is.
Yeah, Mississippi State University, that's where I got my meteorology degree from. They reached out to me and they said, hey, would you want to teach a class on social media? And initially, I wasn't too thrilled about the idea, because I don't have a whole lot of bandwidth in my life to take on more. But they said they would help me and they would do a lot of the legwork creating the modules. They just wanted to talk with me and take what I thought was important and make it into a whole class, a whole course. And so over the course or the series of maybe 5 to 10 Zoom calls. We dialed it all in, and I don't want to give away too much here, but I will say, I'll give a little nugget about the first couple modules, because it's all about finding your niche or niche, depending on how fancy you are, and figuring out who your audience is, like you just mentioned, Kwame. And I think the best thing about that I can say that I try to hammer home in the first couple of modules of my course is consistency. And I'm not saying anything that you won't hear anywhere else. So that's why I'm very, I'd love to talk about this freely right now, is because, man, I'll tell you what, people that consume social media content, they're cheaters. They will be out there, and if you're not in front of their face, they're watching other creators, and they're seeing plenty of stuff. So like you said, you got to get out there every day, if not every other day. And that sort of inadvertently happened to me through my through my job in Charlotte, North Carolina, when my boss forced us to post 12 times a day. Initially, we were all so annoyed and so mad about that, but that's kind of how and why I ended up going viral. And I'll remember that was the post that really blew up that day in April 2019 was the last post of the day. And I just put it out on the internet because I wanted to be done posting for the day. And lo and behold, that was the one. And so no idea is too dumb. No idea takes too much time or effort. And then conversely, even if it seems too easy, you just never know. That could be it. That could be the video. And so, yeah, you got to get your reps in, man. Like you just said, you're filming 50 of these bad boys. You're going to put them out there and then kind of recalibrate. And that's what it's all about. And honestly, I think a lot of people that I talk to, here's another little nugget that I'll just throw out there. A lot of people that I talk to, they say, God, I'd love to be in the social media game making money, but I don't know what I would post. I'm just not that interesting. And I'm like, that is the best time to post, because there's no expectations. There's no pressure. You can do whatever, and it can flop, and it can be okay. You can play around. You can talk about pizza. You can talk about raising a dog. You can talk about how to fly a plane. And if it all flops, who cares? Because there's no pressure. Once you start getting that momentum going, then there's a little bit of pressure, right? Then your fans are expecting, or at least hoping, you maintain a certain standard or go above that standard every time. And that's when it can get, a little bit, that's when burnout sometimes can occur. And that's when it gets a little tricky. And so, yeah, I would just say those two things to people that are interested in dipping their toe into the creator waters. Be consistent, and trust me, you have something to say that nobody else will say in your own way. So just do it, man. Do it pressure-free, stress-free, put it out there, and we'll judge on whether or not you're boring or not.
I'm just going to add to that. It's really funny. There's a social media page out there of a guy who literally just lives his regular life. Like, he literally just makes clips of him doing, when I say, I'm sorry, whoever you are out in the world, I forget his handler's name. It is probably the most boring content I've ever seen. However, I think he now has close to 2 million followers.
There you go.
It's just like, his content is literally, he wakes up, he brushes his teeth, he makes his lunch, he goes to work, he sits in front of his computer, he talks about how many reports he did for that day, when he goes, like what he ate for lunch, like that's basically it. And I think his page is called like Ordinary Guy or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so it really is the truth. Sometimes people just want to follow along with someone else's life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if it's the exact same life as theirs, then they're like, oh, hey, it's just like mine. If it's not like theirs, they're like, okay, it's different from mine. I want to know. But there's something that's going to interest people as long as you keep putting the content out.
Yeah.
And you keep making it something that people, want to digest, or actually, even if they don't care to digest it, whatever, make it for yourself.
Yeah.
And you never know. Like you said, you made that last post not knowing what was going to happen. And boom, right now, my most successful post on TikTok. I'm really trying to work on my TikTok game. It's not the best. I'm trying to get up there. But my two most successful posts, my first one that ever went viral was me going to Trader Joe's and saying that I found a soap that was like an all-in-one. It was like a body wash, a hair wash, and you could also scrub the floor with it. and and I remember once the next post that I made after that, somebody commented, "Hey, it's the Trader Joe's guy." And that's so funny because someone commented on it, was like, "This is Kwame from Love Is Blind." Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But like, that's how crazy virality can work. You can go into a completely different network of people who have never seen you before.
Yeah.
And now they know you because of that content. And then my next most popular, which actually now is my most watched, is a video that I made about expensive eggs and my wife asking for something. It was like it was like next time my wife asked for something expensive. And then I was like, I presented her, a carton of eggs.
Yeah, that was genius. That was genius.
And yeah, it's got like, I think close to 1.5 million views on TikTok now. And I've only got 30,000 followers or so on TikTok. So that's like pretty high leverage in terms of how that actually worked out. But really, most of the content that you're putting out, you can just put it out and see what happens. You could put out the most quality content and it not do great.
Yeah.
And you can just put out content because, I don't know, you felt like it and it absolutely fly.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it. That's the yin and the yang of life. I feel like as long as you're putting something out there, the reward comes back, whether it's the video you worked all day on or the video that took 2 minutes. What does it matter? It all comes out in the wash if and when something pops. And yeah, Kwame, that's hilarious. And it's funny how quickly people move on and or forget who you are, what you've done, where you're at in your life. It's unbelievable. So let that be a lesson to never let the internet define who you are, because they move on, and in a year you could be totally forgotten. And so you got to find that inner peace within you. And know that, the internet doesn't define who you are. You define who you are, and so on and so forth. But yeah, that's hilarious, man. The Trader Joe's guy.
So I have a question for you. We ask everyone that comes on, but you've had a lot of success, worked with a lot of brands, Meta, Dial, some of these other brands.
Yeah.
If there were one brand that you haven't worked with yet, that you were like, if they came knocking, this is the brand that I would want to show up in my inbox, what would that brand be?
Oh, probably Later.
Oh, no. We got lots of brand deals there.
No, gosh, I've worked with so many. A lot of Fortune 500 companies. Have been very lucky. Apple. I went to an Apple event. Man, that thing was a polished gem. So I'm sure their brand deals would be pretty nice. And maybe Nike. The big ones. But I'm not too picky, or I still celebrate every brand deal, man. I know I've heard some influencers or creators kind of complain about having to do this or that for a brand deal. I'm still in shock that anybody even wants to work with me. So I'm happy about all of it. I've only had to turn one down, and that was for an alcohol company because I am sober. I've been sober for 8 years. So yeah. So that's kind of how I'd answer that question.
Wow,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I've got a cool. We'll ask another creator question, but I've got a cool little follow up because I think one thing we love to highlight on this is people who have platforms definitely have causes that they're excited about or advocate for. I didn't know that you were sober for 8 years. That's really cool. Congrats. Amazing job.
Thank you.
Are there any other causes throughout society that you feel like you're really passionate about? Or is this something that you would say, hey, if I could leverage my platform to help as many people as I could or touch as many souls as I could, this is what I would use it for?
Yeah. Dementia. I feel like that's the most inhumane disease anybody could ever come down with. I've had two grandparents pass because of it, and it's horrible. But yes, sobriety for sure. I think I don't talk about it a lot, but I love to talk about it. And I've made a few posts about it here and there over the years, certainly on my Soberversary, which is September 17th. Every year I post about it. And I kind of look forward to it. My birthday is a few weeks after my Soberversary. It's October 7th. And I kind of look forward to my Soberversary more than my actual birthday, because I feel like that's the day that I was born again, or that's that's the day where I was really kind of, I don't know, a new part of me, a new person was born that day, and I had to work for it a little bit, and I earned it rather than just kind of showing up and being like, I'm here now. And to be honest with you, I can't tell you how many people have pulled me aside and they've been like, I gotta talk to you about maybe getting sober because, this and that's going on in my life. And I got to tell you, if you're thinking about it or if it's ever crossed your mind, I implore you to consider it seriously because it's the best thing I've ever done. I feel like it's a cheat code in life, and I would not have gone viral had it not have been for getting sober. I was able to finally gain momentum and stack good quality productive days on top of each other. And that ultimately led to the little bit of slice of success that I've had in my little corner of the internet. And in this day and age, a lot of people are sober curious, and there's a big movement for mocktails, and there's a lot of cool water companies out there like Liquid Death. So I feel like, now more than ever, I think it's a little more socially acceptable to be sober or at least explore sobriety. So yeah. And if anybody watching or listening has any questions or wants any advice or wants to send something my way, DM me on Instagram. I check all that stuff. And I always try to prioritize people that are curious about sobriety first.
I love that. And I love that you share that too. Cause there's people out there, like you said, without people talking about it, posting about it, they're not going to have that conversation. They're not going to explore a choice for themselves that's going to improve their lives. And I'm going to connect you with a couple of people that we actually had on the podcast, and they had a very personal sobriety story that led to them becoming the head of Smashed, which is this big drink brand. And it used to be Mixology, and it's really, really great alcohol-free cocktails.
Yeah.
But they just went crazy viral. But you guys doing a collab, and I don't know if you've heard of them but they smash cans, like you and Nicole would crush on the content side.
Yeah. I'd love that. That'd be amazing. Hell yeah. Let's do it.
But there's so many cool stories out there that should be told. It's funny because I get a lot of fitness content and otherwise, and I was going through some posts, and there's a guy who goes around and he asks fit people, he's like, what do you do to stay healthy? And it was funny because one of the core thematic points that's almost in every content or every comment is it's amazing what percentage of people who are in amazing shape don't drink alcohol and really take care of themselves. And so whether it's for your health, your fitness, your family, addiction, there's a whole variety of reasons to make, certain choices in life. But it is one thing I feel like in society is swaying towards sobriety, and especially with the Gen Z push. And I don't think it's hurting us in any way. And it's, there's so many ways to be positive and have a good time that doesn't require you to not remember what's happening or make choices you're not proud of or put people in danger. So I love that you're out there supporting the cause.
I think I want to say the word alcohol. The origin of that word means demon or something, like you're inviting demons into your body. And Lord knows, some of the things that I've said sound like they when I was drinking sounded like it would have come from a demon. So I don't know. And just any bad choice I've ever made was when I was under the influence. So I'm glad to just eliminate that and be on the straight and narrow. But it seems like we're winding down. Is it okay if I ask Kwame a question here? Because I'm very...
Oh, my gosh.
Tables have turned. Let's go.
Let's go.
So I'm a guy that is familiar with TV, and I do weather. I don't necessarily create reality shows or anything, but I know how editing works and what it's like to maybe not necessarily be in control of your own image. What about Love is Blind? And I think a lot of this probably came out in the reunion, but I'm just curious now that I have you to myself, what was the one thing about being on Love is Blind that caught you by surprise most for positive and negative?
Yeah, that's a good question. This has been Nick's long con to ask me this question ever since we met.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, but So it's funny that you bring up the editing aspect of it. Interestingly enough, on the negative side, I think that's an easy one to talk about. I think, you can they'll only be able to put out content that you give them, right? But one thing that you have to keep in mind, I think anytime it comes to, a show that has a lot of ratings behind it, especially something that is so heavily viewed and watched, like Love is Blind, something that really, really requires a lot of attention, needs a lot of emotion, all of those things. Just about any story that's being told will be heightened by the effects behind it. I noticed this a lot. It was really funny. Like, I'd be having the most basic conversation with Chelsea, and anytime that it was on me, there'd be ominous music and a slow pause, and then you're like, wait a second. Right? Like, I didn't say anything bad there. You know what I'm saying? But I've realized a lot within the editing that any story that is being told can be very, very heavily heightened and kind of perforated based off of whatever story needs to be told, right? And ultimately, within our story, like every couple had difficulties. We all saw each other go through difficulties.
Yeah.
An intense amount of it. I mean, this is one of the craziest experiments you'll ever go through. But in that process, I realized that when I saw us on TV, Chelsea and I's difficulties were heavily focused on because we had kind of the cliffhanger kind of situation. And I was more unsure than most not because I was unsure of Chelsea, but because it was such a drastic change of life, right? Like, for me, if you ask me where I'd live right now, if I had any choice, I'd say New York. All right. If you ask Chelsea right now where she lived, if she had a choice, she'd say probably, I don't know, a prairie house somewhere, right? We're very, very different people. And so when you take just the fact that people are having very, very serious, intimate conversations that have differing points of view.
Yeah.
Any single time that you hear a different point of view from another person who you can reinforce their unsureness and kind of create more of an ambiguous storyline and something that is intense that will make people keep viewing and keep wondering, you're going to focus on that. Yep. And so with me, I loved my producer. He was an amazing guy. We had a great relationship. But because of that, a lot of times he, would talk to me and say, hey, maybe you should talk about this, right? Even though it's something that Chelsea and I had talked about a million times before. But now it seems like I'm talking about the same thing over and over and over and over, right? It's really funny. People would like DM me and be like, why do you keep bringing that thing up? Like, why? You're such a mama's boy. Why do you keep bringing up your mom? And it was like, in every scene, I was asked to talk about how my mom was,
right.
Yeah, right. And so I think there's certain points like that on the negative side. On the positive side, I will say, like, the whole experience of Love is Blind is probably like one of the most amazing things ever. Every time that I talk to somebody who's been through Love is Blind, the experience of Love is Blind is like nothing else, man. We have this incredibly small microcosm of people, this group that can relate to each other in a way that literally nobody else can. And you can go on a lot of different experiences and a lot of different reality shows. Like, you can go on The Bachelor and, like, I feel like you can watch The Bachelor from the outside in and kind of understand, right? You can watch Temptation Island from the outside, in, but Love is Blind is just, it's like nothing else. And the experience is just so special and so specific and so heightened to make you feel. Chelsea and I were just looking at each other the other day and we were like, we say this more often than not. We're like, we can't believe we did this.
Yeah, I mean, listen. In this day and age, I was talking about how pop culture is fragmented right now. Mm-hmm. Everybody that I know watches Love is Blind. I mean, that is truly a show where you're going to get eyeballs. Stars are kind of blind. And I couldn't imagine what going through that was like. And I got to tell you, man, I've always been a big fan. I've always been Team Kwame and Chelsea for sure. I could just imagine, though, what it would be like to, even if I'm having, like, I'll go home tonight and talk to my wife and she'll probably say, hey, take out the trash. And I'll be like, how about tomorrow? You add a little bit of music to that and all of a sudden we're about to come to blows. So that's crazy. But I got to say, the thing that I love that you did in your season was that you told, I forget who you were talking to. Maybe it was Chelsea, but you told her your real name. And that was, I have so much respect for you for that, man. I'm a big proponent of equality. And I was just, man to man, that was a cool thing that you did. And yeah, I've always just kind of wanted to tell you that.
Oh, dude, I appreciate that, man. Big time.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And I knew you were a good guy based off of that moment right there. You're transparent, you're being authentic, and I really loved it. So I'm just honored I got a chance to meet you and talk to you both. And thank you again for this opportunity. And if you ever do move to New York, let's hang out a little bit without a screen in front of us.
Who knew 100%. That solving bipartisan politics, all it took was Love is Blind.
I'm telling you.
We're uniting America.
I'm telling you.
Great.
Oh man. A lot of cool conversation here. Nick, we appreciate you opening up. I know that you talked about some things that were really serious to you, and we talked about some things that were fun as well. In kind of getting to the point where we call this a day, I just want to kind of open the floor up to you to give us any last bits of word that you would want to tell us. I think there's two questions that I typically ask. I guess I'll ask those and then you can segue to whatever.
Okay.
But two questions. One, we'll start with, what's your favorite movie?
Well, it's Wolf of Wall Street. Which, if you're a red-blooded American male, I feel like that should be your favorite. I also, for whatever weird reason, I've always loved the movie Troy. Brad Pitt, Eric Bana, Orlando Bloom. I don't know why. It's like visually stunning. There's a lot of just beautiful scenery and cinematography in that. And anytime I need motivation, I just look at how cut up Brad Pitt is in that movie. And I'm like, all right, I got work to do. So yeah, I'd probably say those two movies.
Awesome. And then your favorite quote.
Oh, this is a good one. This is bars. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes.
I hate this quote because sometimes it snares me in my own words. But what is it? Motivation doesn't breed action. Action breeds motivation. So if you're sitting on the couch and you're waiting for motivation to come, it's probably not going to work that way. But if you get to work, that will eventually build up the momentum that you need to have that motivation to keep going. A lot of times I'll be laying there not wanting to do anything, and that damn quote will pop into my head, and I'll go, man, I got to get up and get after it. So, that quote is great. It's also a doozy. So do with it what you may, but that's the one I'm riding with.
Awesome. I love that so much. I think it's so true in life. It was funny. We had a meeting with our leadership team here, and we talked about like doing things that scare you and making commitments, and like that concept that action inspires motivation. And it's like, we came away with the line of like, sign up for the race. It's like, go sign up for the thing that scares you, take the positive first action, and then you'll be motivated to wake up every day and train. Like, do things that scare you. And same with social media. It's like, put yourself out there, set a goal, go post every day. A lot of those same things we talked about. You don't find success unless you take action. And I think same with social media, the more that you post, the more you engage, you find those moments of inspiration, those moments of motivation that keep you going, that launch you in that new direction. So we're really excited for you, all the success you've had. I can't wait for like Nick Paradigm 3.0. It's going to be a doozy. We'd love to connect with you. We'll be out in May for Social Media Week in New York.
Oh, yeah.
We can connect up and do something. It'd be amazing. But just huge fan, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, guys. So easy to talk to. I appreciate all the thoughtful questions. You clearly did your research, and I appreciate it. And I acknowledge all the work and time this took on your end. So thank you both, man. You're both a couple of goats.
Oh, we appreciate it. Well, look at that. We've got a wrap and a call on today's episode, but it was fantastic. Thank you, Nick, for being here. Thank you, Scott, for sharing the wisdom as always. We appreciate everybody who tuned in today. I hope y'all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.